My daughter-in-law looked me straight in the face and said, "You get nothing, not a penny. The house, the savings, it's all ours now." That was the moment I realized something every woman over 55 needs to hear. If you own a home, someone can try to erase you with a single legal document. She thought I wouldn't fight back. She thought I didn't understand the papers she shoved in front of me. She thought I was too old, too tired, too incompetent to defend myself. But she was wrong, because what she didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that the will she tried to use against me, the will she proudly waved like a victory flag, was not the final version. And the lawyer, God bless him, cleared his throat, opened the folder, and said 8 words that changed everything. There is one more page you didn't see. If you're a mother, if you're over 55, if you've ever feared being pushed aside or written out of your own life, stay with me, because this story might protect you one day. And what happened after that page was read is something my daughter-in-law never recovered from. I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed with a message that didn't look meant for me. A short notification, just a few lines of text, but it would change everything I thought I knew about my son. The sale is finalized. Funds will be wired tomorrow. Sale? Funds? Finalized? I frowned, thinking it was a wrong number. I almost deleted it. But underneath the message, I saw my address. My home. My husband's home. The home we built together with decades of sweat, hope, and careful saving. The address appeared again, clear as daylight, undeniable. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. At 72 years old, I thought I had learned how to calm myself, but my hands shook so violently that the folded towel slipped from my fingers and fell to the floor. The room suddenly felt too small, too loud, too bright. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. I called my son immediately. He didn't answer. I called again. And again. By the 5th call, the ringing stopped mid-loop. I thought he had finally picked up. Instead, the screen flashed. This number is not available. Not disconnected. Not busy. Not off. Unavailable intentionally. My chest tightened. A cold, slow bloom of dread spread through me. I tried calling from the landline. Same result. That's when I knew something was deeply wrong. I pulled out my folder of home records, the deed, the tax receipts, the insurance statements. I flipped through them with trembling fingers. Everything was in my name. Everything legally intact. So how could my home be sold? My breath hitched. Had I been hacked? Had something been forged? Had someone accessed my accounts? I rushed to my computer, typing my email password with fingers that refused to stay still. And there it was. A forwarded message from a real estate company. A message I had never opened, because I had never received it. The email included sales contract, digital signature confirmation, my forged signature, and the closing date, 2 days from now. I gasped so loudly I scared myself. A sharp pain shot across my chest. My signature, the elegant loop my husband always said looked like a woman who knew her worth, was twisted, sloppy, wrong. A stranger's imitation of my name. Someone had signed on my behalf. Someone had sold my house. Someone who had access to my personal information. Someone who knew my routines. Someone who could predict where my important documents were kept. There was only one person who fit every one of those descriptions. My son. The realization shattered me. My son, the boy I carried for 9 months, the child I protected with every breath, the man I believed would take care of me in my old age, might have sold my home behind my back. But I still tried to deny it. I still wanted to believe it was a mistake. So I drove to his house. When he opened the door, he looked surprised, almost guilty, like a child caught stealing cookies. "Mom, you should have called." "I did," I said quietly. "5 times." He swallowed hard. I held up my phone. "I got a message. About a sale. About my house." His eyes flickered. A tiny betrayal of truth. "Mom, let's not do this here." That was the moment my world tilted. The sentence, soft, evasive, cowardly, told me everything I needed to know. He knew. He knew about the sale. He knew I knew. And he wanted to hide it. My voice cracked. "Did you sell my home?" Silence. Then his jaw tightened. His shoulders rose. And he whispered the words that broke something inside me. "It's already done, Mom. Already done. Final. Irreversible." I staggered backward, gripping the railing to keep myself upright. "Why?" I choked out. "How could you?" He wouldn't look at me. He stared at the floor like a man ashamed of the truth but unwilling to undo it. "I needed the money," he finally said. "You have another place to go. It's not like you're going to live forever." The air left my lungs. "Not like you're going to live forever." My son had sold my home, the place where his father and I lived, loved, and built our life, because he decided my years were numbered. Because he saw me as temporary, replaceable, expendable. That was the moment something in me cracked wide open. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that months earlier, I had already taken precautions. I had already rewritten one document, a document hidden so well, in a place he would never think to look. A document that would turn his plan into ash. A document that would bring the sale of the house and everyone involved to a complete, crashing stop. My son thought he had outsmarted me. He had no idea what was coming. When I left my son's house that day, I walked to my car in a daze. The world felt unreal, like I had stepped into someone else's nightmare. The wind was cold, but I barely felt it. The streetlights flickered on as evening settled in, but they blurred behind tears I refused to let fall. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. There is a kind of silence that mothers know, the silence of guilt. A silence heavier than shouting. A silence that tells the truth before words ever do. My son had shown me that silence, and it was louder than any confession. When I arrived home, my home, still mine for a little while longer, the house looked different. Not physically, but emotionally. It suddenly felt fragile, as if the walls knew they had been betrayed. As if the floorboards understood they were days away from belonging to someone else. I walked through each room slowly. The living room where my husband taught our son to play cards. The kitchen where I burned the first pie I ever made. The dining table scratched from decades of family dinners. The hallway where we measured our son's height every perfidy. Birthday. The bedroom where my husband took his last breath in. My arms. And now my son was selling it. To a stranger. Without telling me. Without asking. Without caring. I sank into my old armchair. The one with the faded floral pattern. The one my husband used to fall asleep in during Sunday football games. My hands trembled as I tried to steady myself. I whispered into the empty living room, "Mark, if you were here, what would you tell me to do?" Of course, no answer came. Silence again. But this silence was different. This one felt comforting, as if reminding me that I wasn't as powerless as I felt, because deep down, I knew. My husband would never forgive me if I let our son take everything we worked for. My grief began to transform into something else. Something sharper. Something steadier. Determination. I wiped my tears and went straight to the hallway closet. Behind the winter coats, inside an old metal box, beneath letters from my husband, was the document my son didn't know existed. The hidden will. Signed, notarized, witnessed. A legal weapon powerful enough to stop the sale in its tracks. But I wasn't ready to use it yet. I needed information. I needed to know exactly what my son had done and how far the damage had spread. So I called the real estate agent listed on the contract. A woman answered, cheerful and professional, until I said, "My name is Linda Parker. The house you're selling belongs to me." Then her tone changed, not guilty, but cautious. "Oh, Mrs. Parker, your son told us you were unavailable." I stiffened. "Unavailable how?" Another pause. "He indicated we should not contact you directly due to cognitive concerns." Cognitive concerns. My heart went cold. My son had laid the groundwork to portray me as incompetent, to make my signature unnecessary, to sell my home as if I had already lost my mind. And suddenly everything made sense. The forged signature, the blocked calls, the rushed timeline, the secrecy. He wasn't just stealing my house. He was preparing to strip me of my legal rights. I inhaled sharply, trying not to let the agent hear the tremor in my voice. "Who signed the contract?" I asked calmly. "According to our file, you did." My stomach twisted. "Can you send me the exact document?" "Yes, of course." I hung up and waited for the email. When it arrived, I opened the PDF. My name was there, my forged signature. And next to it, my son's signature as power of attorney. Power of attorney. He had filed a fraudulent POA. My own child had declared himself the controller of my affairs. My vision blurred. I thought I might faint. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had planned this, carefully, deliberately, cruelly. But again, he didn't know about the hidden will. He didn't know the secret I carried. He didn't know that I had created a legal structure years ago, something stronger than any forged signature. That night, as I sat alone in my quiet house, a storm building inside my ribcage, I whispered, "You wanted to take everything, son. But you forgot who raised you. And you forgot what I'm capable of." The silence around me shifted, no longer oppressive. Now, it felt like preparation. Because tomorrow, I would begin my counterattack. And I would do it the one way he would never expect. Legally, quietly, powerfully. And when the truth surfaced, it wouldn't be my life that fell apart. It would be his. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea I couldn't drink, my hands wrapped around the warm mug, but the warmth never reached my chest. I had spent the whole night replaying every memory of my son, his first steps, his graduation, the day he told me he'd take care of me when I'm old. Now he was taking care of things. Yes, my affairs, my home, my rights for himself. I stared at the email again, the one with my forged signature. Every time I looked at it, I felt the same sting. The child I raised had sold my house like it was an old couch he didn't want anymore. But today, I needed answers, real ones. So I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. The lawyer who helped me create the hidden will nearly a decade earlier. His name was Harold Bennett, a quiet man with a sharp mind and a gentle way of explaining hard truths. When he picked up the phone, his voice was warm. "Linda, I've been expecting your call." Those words alone made my breath catch. "You knew something would happen?" "I didn't know what," he said softly. "But I knew someone would try. Your trust and will are strong. Too strong for greedy people to ignore. Greedy people." Hearing someone else say it out loud broke something in me. I whispered, "It was my son, Harold." He didn't sound surprised. "Come in," he said. "Bring everything." The meeting. His office smelled of leather-bound books and old paper comfortingly familiar. He motioned for me to sit, and I placed the forged documents on his desk. He adjusted his glasses and studied them carefully. After a long silence, he said, "This is bad." My heart dropped. "How bad?" He tapped the fake signature. "Your son filed a power of attorney, but not a legitimate one." He held up the page. "This format hasn't been used in 15 years. It's a template downloaded from the internet. And this signature? A poor imitation." He turned to me. "Linda, this is fraud." The word felt heavy, final, terrifying. "Are you telling me he could go to prison?" "Yes," he said. "And everyone involved, the agent, the buyer, the notary could face consequences too." I covered my mouth. I hadn't wanted revenge. I hadn't wanted punishment. I just wanted my home. But Harold continued, voice steady. "Before we take action, I need to know something important." He leaned forward, looking directly into my eyes. "Do you still want to protect your son?" The question cut deeper than I expected. Protect him? After he took my home? After he tried to silence me? After he declared me incompetent behind my back? But he was still my child. And mothers, we don't stop loving even when we start breaking. I whispered. "I don't want him to go to jail. I just want my house back." Harold nodded slowly. "I can do that. I can stop the sale. I can freeze everything. I can expose the forgery without pursuing criminal charges, if you want that." Relief loosened my chest. "Yes, that's what I want." He smiled gently. "In that case, the only weapon you'll need is the one you prepared years ago." He reached into his drawer and placed a folder on the table. "My hidden will." My voice trembled. "Will this really stop the sale?" He nodded. "This isn't just a will, Linda. It includes a property protection addendum. You signed it when your husband passed. It states that your real estate cannot be transferred, sold, or refinanced without your explicit, witnessed approval. No exceptions, no loopholes." He tapped the final page. "It overrides everything your son tried to do." My breath caught. I had forgotten that clause. My husband had insisted on adding it just in case. Back then, I thought he was being overly cautious. But now, he had protected me even after death. For a moment, I closed my eyes, whispering, "Thank you, Mark." Harold's voice snapped me back. "We need to act fast. Your son is expecting the funds tomorrow. That gives us less than 24 hours. My heartbeat quickened. "What do I do?" He handed me a pen. "Sign this authorization. I'll contact the title company, the buyer, the bank, and the agent. I'll pull the public records and block the transfer. And then," he looked at me with a firm, solemn expression, "you will need to confront your son, not with emotion, not with anger, but with the truth." My stomach twisted. "Face him? After what he did?" "Yes," Harold said gently, "because he still believes you're powerless, and until he sees otherwise, hell keep taking." I swallowed hard. Tomorrow my son would learn the truth. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't confused. I wasn't incompetent. I wasn't done fighting. And this time, I had the law and my husband's foresight on my side. I didn't sleep that night. Not a single minute. I watched the shadows crawl across my bedroom walls as the clock ticked closer and closer to morning. At 7:42 a.m., Harold texted, "Sale frozen. Title transfer halted. Buyer notified. Your son will learn soon." My heart raced. Not with fear, with something sharper. Anticipation. At 9:10 a.m., My phone rang. My son, for the first time in days, he was calling me because I had something he needed. I let it ring twice before answering. "Mom," he said, no warmth, no remorse, only panic. "Did you do something to the sale?" His tone wasn't the tone of a son speaking to his mother. It was the tone of a man whose scheme had just collapsed. I stayed calm. I protected my home. He cursed under his breath. "The buyer is threatening to sue me. The title company won't release anything. They said there's a legal block." "What did you sign? What did you do?" His voice cracked, not from guilt, from fear of consequences. He still hadn't asked if I was okay. Not once. I exhaled slowly. "I know about the forged signature, Michael." The silence on the line was instant. Then, "That's not Mom. Listen, I can explain." "No," I said softly. "For once, you will listen." Another silence. Sharp. Bare. Exposing everything. "You tried to take my home. You declared me incompetent. You forged my name. You lied to your family, your wife, and the law. And you thought I wouldn't find out." His breathing grew fast. "This is insane. You're blowing everything out of proportion." "No," I whispered. "You are." "When you decided to betray your own mother." He didn't respond, because there was no defense left. The shift. Then I said the words that changed the entire tone of the conversation. "I had a protection clause in place. Your father made sure of it. The sale is canceled. It can't go through, not now, not ever without my approval." He inhaled sharply. "What clause? What are you talking about?" "The hidden will?" I said simply. Silence. Then an explosion. "You had a secret will. You hid legal documents from me." I almost laughed. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. "You sold my home behind my back. You forged my signature. And you're angry about secrets?" He didn't speak. He couldn't. Because he saw the truth now. I wasn't a helpless old woman he could push around. I wasn't the fragile parent he imagined. And the law was not on his side. The confession. Finally, he exhaled shakily. I needed the money, Mom. Money. It always came back to money. Why didn't you come to me?" I asked quietly. "Because you would have said no, and that gives you the right," I whispered, "to take what isn't yours." He didn't answer. A moment passed heavy as stone. Then he said something that broke my heart more than anything else in this nightmare. "I didn't think you'd fight me." I closed my eyes. There it was. The root of everything. He thought age had weakened me. He thought grief had softened me. He thought love made me blind. He didn't know that motherhood, real motherhood, never dies. It just gets quieter, calmer, more strategic. "Michael," I said gently, "I love you, but I will not let you take my home." His voice cracked. "What happens now?" I looked at the hidden will on my table. "You tell me the truth," I said, "about everything. Or we take this to court." He gasped. "No, Mom, please don't involve the courts, please." But it was too late. This wasn't a simple family argument. This was fraud, elder abuse, financial exploitation, and property theft. And tomorrow, we would both sit across from a lawyer. But only one of us would have the truth on our side. The next morning, sunlight filtered through my curtains, but it didn't bring warmth. I woke with a heaviness in my chest, the kind that comes from realizing trouble doesn't disappear overnight. My son was terrified. But terrified wasn't enough. I needed the truth, and I wasn't going to get it from him. So I called the Realtor. Her voice trembled the moment she recognized my name. "Mrs. Parker, I've been expecting your call." It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Cautious. Guilty. as if she already knew she was standing on shaky ground. "I want to understand," I told her calmly. "How did my house get listed without my knowledge?" She hesitated. "Well, your son said you were unavailable, and that he had power of attorney. He told us you were," she cleared her throat, "experiencing cognitive decline." The words pierced me like a blade. Cognitive decline. He told strangers I was losing my mind. I closed my eyes, whispering through clenched teeth. "And you never once contacted me? Not even by mail?" Another silence. "We tried," she said quietly. "But your son intercepted the mail." Intercepted. Like a guardian over someone incapable. Like he owned my life. I felt the room tilt. "What else did he tell you?" She exhaled slowly, the sigh of someone who finally chooses honesty over self-preservation. "He said you weren't safe in your home anymore. That you had fallen twice. That you forgot to turn off the stove. That you were confused about your finances." My grip tightened on the phone. Lies. All of it. I hadn't fallen. I cooked every day. I managed my bills meticulously. He painted me as a helpless old woman so he could steal everything. My voice softened, dangerously calm. "And you believed him?" Her answer was small, ashamed. "Yes," I held back tears. Not because of the realtor, but because of what my son had become. "Mrs. Parker," she continued, "there's something else you need to know." I braced myself. When the buyer reviewed the paperwork, something didn't look right. He questioned the signature. He asked your son for proof, and your son avoided every request. He became agitated, defensive, even hostile. I swallowed hard. She continued. "The buyer started to suspect fraud. He said he planned to walk away, but your son convinced him to push forward. He said you were unreasonable, and that someone needed to take control before you ruined the family." Ruined the family. So that's what he believed. That I was the problem. That I stood in the way of his future. "And he told you this directly?" I asked. "Yes. Multiple times." My heart sank, but my spine straightened. "Thank you," I said quietly. "You've told me more truth in 5 minutes than my son has in months." "Mrs. Parker, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I truly didn't know." But my voice stayed steady. "You know now." When I hung up, my body felt lighter because knowledge is power. And I had just gained a weapon my son hadn't expected. Witness testimony. The realtor. The buyer. The forged POA. The hidden will. Piece by piece. The truth was forming a fortress around me. My son had built his plan on lies. But my protection, my strength, it was built on law, foresight, and the love of a husband who protected me even from the grave. That afternoon, I drove to Harold's office again. He listened to every detail, nodding slowly. "Good," he said. "We have a timeline now. And we have corroboration. Your son will panic, and that's when people make mistakes." I exhaled. "What happens next?" He clasped his hands. "We wait for him to break." I stiffened. "Break?" "Yes," Harold said gently. "Under pressure, under guilt, under fear. He will come to you, and when he does, he will reveal everything." I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready for the pain, but Harold wasn't done. And when he breaks, we will be ready. That night, I sat alone in the dim glow of my living room lamp, clutching the hidden will in my lap. My home, my memories, my life, all saved by one decision I made years ago. But tomorrow, the truth would surface, and my son would finally face himself. It was almost midnight when I heard the knock. 3 soft taps, hesitant, uncertain. I knew it was him. A mother knows. I opened the door slowly. My son stood there, shoulders slumped, eyes red, breathing uneven. He looked like a man whose world was collapsing. "Mom, can I come in?" I hesitated. That hesitation, just 2 seconds, shattered him more than any words could have. He stepped inside quietly. The house was dim, warmed only by the small lamp near my armchair. He looked around as if seeing it for the first time, the place he grew up in, the walls that held our family's stories, the home he almost stole. He sat on the couch, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly. "I messed up," he whispered. I waited. "You stopped the sale. Everything is ruined. They're threatening legal action. The title company said I forged your signature. The agent won't talk to me. The buyer called me a scammer." He lifted his head. "And it's all because you froze the transfer." I raised an eyebrow. "Because I protected myself." His breathing hitched. He looked away as his voice cracked. "I didn't think you'd fight back." There it was again. The wound behind every wound. "You thought," I said slowly, "that being old meant being weak." He swallowed, guilt rising in his eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said quietly. I needed money. And you have a house you don't even use all the rooms in. And you're alone. And what?" I cut in. "You decided my life didn't matter anymore?" His lips trembled. "Mom, I was afraid. I made mistakes. I didn't know how to fix things." I studied him, his posture, his fear, his shame. He wasn't here because he regretted what he did. He was here because he got caught. And that was the most painful truth of all. I spoke gently, too gently for the hurt searing my chest. "You forged my signature, Michael." He covered his face with his hands. "I know. You told people I was mentally incompetent." His shoulders shook. "I'm sorry. You sold my home behind my back." He inhaled sharply. "I didn't think. That's exactly the problem," I said. "You didn't think. Not about me. Not about the law. Not about the consequences." He stiffened. "There's something else," he whispered. I froze. "What?" He looked up, eyes shining with a guilt I had never seen in him before, and he said the twist that tightened every muscle in my body. "It wasn't only me." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" He took a shaky breath. "Someone else pushed me. Someone else wanted the house gone. Someone else told me to declare you incompetent." The room swayed slightly. "Who?" He winced. "Emily. His wife, the daughter-in-law who always smiled politely, who always brought store-bought pies to holidays, who seemed fragile and sweet. Emily, the one who didn't even grow up in this home, wanted it sold? Why?" I whispered. He blinked hard, tears forming. "Because she wanted the money to pay her debts. She said we needed a fresh start. She said you had plenty. She said you wouldn't fight us." He looked up, broken. "She said you wouldn't notice." A tear slipped down my cheek, not from sadness, but from a deep, pulsing ache. My son continued. "She promised she'd handle everything. She filled out the POA forms. She forged your signature, not me. She told me I just had to sign as witness. She said it was just paperwork." I felt the ground shift beneath me. "Your wife," I whispered, "committed fraud in my name." He nodded weakly. "She said she'd fix everything. She said you'd understand someday." Understand? Understand losing my home? Understand being declared incompetent? Understand betrayal? My voice shook with controlled fury. "She put your future, your freedom, and your mother's life at risk." He covered his face. "I know. The pieces fell into place. The aggression, the timeline, the secrecy, the forged POA, the rushed sale, the hostile agent description, the manipulation. It wasn't just him. It was her. And he had followed her lead. I exhaled slowly. Michael, this is bigger than you realize. He looked up desperately. What do I do? I said the only thing left to say. Tomorrow, you will come with me to the lawyer, and you will tell him everything. He swallowed. And Emily? My answer was simple, steady, final. Let the law decide what happens to her. The clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed. For the first time all night, my son looked afraid not of losing money but of losing himself. And tomorrow, he would learn what real accountability looks like. The next morning, I drove to Harold's office with my son sitting stiffly beside me in the passenger seat. He didn't speak during the entire ride, not even a whisper. It wasn't the quiet of peace. It was the quiet of someone waiting for judgment. His hands kept tightening and loosening on his knees, a restless rhythm of guilt and fear. I could almost hear his heartbeat over the hum of the car. He wasn't the little boy who used to hold my hand in grocery stores. He wasn't the teenager who used to slam his bedroom door when he lost a video game. He wasn't even the adult man who once helped me fix my mailbox. He was someone I didn't know, and today he would face a truth he could no longer avoid. The meeting begins. Harold was already standing when we entered his office, which he never did unless a situation was dire. Sit, he said calmly. My son sat. I sat beside him. The room felt colder than usual. Harold opened a folder filled with documents, the forged signature, the fraudulent POA, the rushed sale, the buyer's testimony, the realtor's emails. He placed them on the desk one by one, deliberately, letting the weight of each page fall like a stone. My son swallowed audibly. Harold began. Michael, everything you did is illegal. Not questionable, not inappropriate, illegal. My son shuddered. Harold continued, voice firm but measured. You committed and allowed others to commit. Fraud, elder financial exploitation, forgery, misrepresentation, attempted property theft, and falsification of legal authority. He lifted his gaze, eyes sharp. If your mother chose to press charges, you would face jail time. My son's breath hitched. I looked at him. He refused to meet my eyes. Harold softened his tone, but only slightly. Now, your mother has chosen not to pursue criminal prosecution, at least not against you. The room went still. My son whispered, barely audible. Not against me? Harold continued. But the courts may have a different opinion. And anyone else involved, anyone who forged a signature, submitted false documents, or pressured you into violating state property laws, will face consequences. My son's face drained of color. He whispered, Emily. Harold didn't react. Instead, he leaned forward. This is no longer a misunderstanding. This is no longer a bad decision. This is no longer about money. He tapped the folder. This is now a family war. The words hit the room like thunder. My son finally looked up, eyes wide, terrified. War? Harold nodded. Yes. Because once a family member attempts to seize another's assets through fraud, the legal system must treat it as a hostile action. It's an attack, a violation, a betrayal. He gestured to me gently. And your mother has every right to protect herself. My son blinked rapidly, almost childlike. I didn't think it would go this far. Harold's voice sharpened. That is because you never thought your mother would stand up for herself. The silence between us thickened. Harold placed the hidden will on the table. This document blocks any sale or transfer. It also invalidates any POA that isn't explicitly filed by your mother herself. He looked at my son. You never had power over her assets, not for 1 second. My son slumped in his chair, defeated. I felt the ache of 100 heartbreaks, but I kept my composure. The revelation, Michael, Harold said quietly. Your mother is willing to protect you, but she cannot protect your wife. My son's lips trembled. She didn't mean to. Harold cut him off. She forged legal documents. She falsified a POA. She impersonated your mother. She attempted to sell a property she had no rights to. That's felony fraud. My son shook his head, tears forming. But she was trying to help us. No, Harold said sharply. She was trying to help herself. The truth sliced through the air. My son finally broke. He placed his head in his hands and sobbed softly, not just from fear, but from the realization that his wife had dragged him into something far darker than he understood. Harold waited patiently. When my son looked up again, his voice was trembling. What do we do now? Harold answered simply, You tell the entire truth, every detail, and then we prepare for court. My son nodded weakly, but when Harold stood to end the meeting, he placed a hand on my shoulder, and he whispered the words I would never forget. You're stronger than they thought, Linda. I wasn't sure whether to cry or to finally breathe. The courthouse was colder than I remembered. The marble floors echoed every step we took, and the tall ceilings made every whisper feel like a confession. My son walked beside me, shoulders heavy, head low, the weight of his choices visible in every movement. He wasn't handcuffed. He wasn't formally charged. But he was standing in a courtroom because of his own actions, and today, for the first time, he would have to answer for them. Harold guided us to our seats. My son's wife, Emily, sat on the opposite side of the room. Her posture was rigid, lips pressed tightly together, eyes cold and unrepentant. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at my son. She looked angry, like I had ruined her plans. I felt my stomach twist. The judge enters. Everyone stood. Judge Harris, stern, composed, sharp-eyed, took his seat. The clerk read the case. Court review regarding fraudulent power of attorney, attempted unauthorized sale of property, and allegations of elder exploitation. Hearing it announced aloud made my heart tighten. My son squeezed his hands together. Emily crossed her arms. The judge looked at all of us. This is a serious matter. I expect full honesty. His eyes lingered on my son. And full accountability. The questioning begins. Harold rose first. Your Honor, the central issue is simple. Mrs. Parker never authorized the sale of her home. She never signed a POA. She was declared incompetent without medical evaluation, legal process, or consent. He walked to the center of the courtroom, and we have the person responsible sitting right here. All eyes turned to my son. The judge nodded. Mr. Parker, stand. My son rose slowly. Do you acknowledge that the signature on the sale contract is not your mother's? My son's voice cracked. Yes, Your Honor. Do you acknowledge you submitted a power of attorney that you knew was not legitimate? My son swallowed hard. Yes. Did you ever consult your mother before beginning the sale process? No. Did your mother ever indicate she was mentally incompetent? No. Then why? The judge asked calmly. Did you tell professionals that she could not be contacted due to cognitive decline? My son broke. He inhaled sharply, tears filling his eyes. I listened to the wrong person. He looked briefly at Emily. She told me Mom wouldn't understand, that she'd get upset, that we needed the money more than she did. The judge raised a hand. Your wife told you to commit fraud? My son wiped his eyes. She said we'd fix it later, She said it was just paperwork. A murmur rippled across the courtroom. Emily's face twisted with anger. "That's not true," she shouted. "He's lying to save himself." The judge slammed the gavel. "Enough!" Emily stood, pointing at me. "She doesn't need that house. She lives alone. She has savings. She barely uses half the space. We needed it. We deserved it." The judge stared at her in disbelief. "You deserved it? Because why?" She hesitated. Because we needed help." The judge leaned forward. "Help is something you ask for, not something you steal." Emily's lips trembled. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. The turning point. The judge turned back to my son. "Mr. Parker, do you understand the gravity of your actions?" "Yes," he whispered. "Do you accept responsibility for your part in this fraudulent attempt?" He nodded. "Yes. And do you agree that your mother is mentally competent and fully capable of making her own legal decisions?" My son lifted his head. "Yes," he said firmly. "She is. She always has been. And I was wrong." The courtroom grew still. Harold's eyes softened. The judge nodded. "Thank you. That will be noted." My son sat slowly, exhaling shakily, not from relief, but from surrender. For the first time, I saw my son again. Not the greedy man he had become, not the frightened adult making excuses, but a broken boy, finally telling the truth. The final word from the judge. The judge spoke directly to me. "Mrs. Parker, your son has cooperated today. That will matter. But this case is not over. We will reconvene after a full evaluation." Then he looked at Emily. "And Mrs. Parker's daughter-in-law, we will address your role separately." Emily's face went pale. The gavel struck. Court adjourned. As we walked out of the courtroom, my son whispered, "Mom, I'm so sorry." I didn't answer. Not yet. Because forgiveness isn't something given in hallways. It's something earned over time. And this story was far from over. 2 weeks after the hearing, I received a letter from the court. A mandatory capacity evaluation. My hands trembled as I opened it, not because I feared the results, but because of what it meant. My son's lie had triggered a legal process meant for people who could no longer think clearly. I could think clearly, too clearly, clear enough to feel every cut of betrayal. That night, I sat at my kitchen table reviewing the paperwork. My house was quiet, but my mind was loud. Why was I being tested? Why wasn't he the one being evaluated for moral competence? Why was I defending my sanity? Because my son had declared me incompetent behind my back. But Harold called, his voice steady. "This evaluation isn't a threat," he said. "It's an opportunity. Once you pass, the court will fully restore your authority, and your son loses any leverage his fraudulent POA once implied." I exhaled. "So, I should welcome it." "You should," he replied. "And Linda, you'll pass. Easily." I wished I felt as confident as he did. The day of the evaluation. The evaluator was a sharp-eyed woman in her late 50s named Dr. Myers. She arrived promptly at 10 a.m. Her handshake was firm, her tone neutral, her expression unreadable. "Mrs. Parker, today we'll be assessing memory, reasoning, orientation, comprehension, and executive function. Do you understand why this evaluation is required?" I nodded. "Yes, because my son claimed I was mentally incompetent in order to sell my house." She didn't react, but the slight pause in her pen told me she registered the gravity of my answer. The test began. Simple questions at first. "What is today's date?" Who is the current president? What did you have for breakfast? Then more difficult tasks, recalling short stories, performing mental calculations, naming objects quickly, drawing complex shapes from memory. I completed every task. Not perfectly, no one my age does, but clearly, confidently, correctly. But the part that broke me was when she asked, "What would you do if someone you trusted tried to take advantage of you?" My breath caught. I swallowed before answering. "I would stand up for myself," I whispered. "Even if it breaks my heart." Her eyes softened for the first time. "Thank you, Mrs. Parker. That's all for today." When she left, the house felt lighter. I sat on the couch and took a long, deliberate breath. I had done it. I had faced the test my son created through his lies. But I wouldn't know the results for several days. And those days, those long, quiet days, were some of the hardest of my life. The results. On a Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Harold. His voice carried a smile. "You passed with excellent remarks." The evaluator noted full capacity and no cognitive impairment. I closed my eyes as relief washed over me, but Harold wasn't done. "There's more," he said. The judge reviewed the report immediately. He signed an order restoring your full legal rights and rejecting any validity of your son's POA. From this point forward, your son has zero legal authority over your affairs. My chest tightened. Zero. Zero authority. Zero control. Zero leverage. "So what happens now?" I asked quietly. "Now?" Harold's tone shifted. "Now your son faces the consequences of his actions in court." I nodded slowly, a mixture of strength and sadness swirling inside my chest. I had passed the evaluation, but the real test was still coming. And for the first time, I wasn't sure how much my son could survive. Cliffhanger ending of Chapter 9. That night, as I prepared for bed, there was another knock at my door. But this time, it wasn't my son. It was Emily. Her eyes were wild, her breathing uneven, and the first words out of her mouth were, "We need to talk. Now." I didn't invite her in. Not at first. Her presence at my door after weeks of silence, lies, and manipulation felt like a cold gust of wind sneaking into my home. She stood there trembling, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "Please," she whispered, I need a minute." Against my better judgment, against the ache still raw inside me, I stepped aside. She entered slowly, cautiously, like she was walking into a church she didn't feel worthy of stepping into. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where my husband once read the newspaper, where my son once did his homework, where birthdays were celebrated, where life had felt simple. Now it felt like a witness to betrayal. Emily's voice cracked first. "He told you everything, didn't he?" I didn't respond. She nodded to herself, staring at her trembling hands. "He wasn't supposed to tell you. He wasn't supposed to break." Her words made my stomach twist. Break? She was talking about my son, as if he were a pawn who had disappointed her. I spoke quietly. "I know what you did, Emily. The forged signature, the fraudulent POA, convincing my son that I was incompetent." She flinched at each word, as if each truth was a blow. Then she whispered, "I didn't mean for it to go so far." I leaned back. "Then how far did you mean for it to go?" She swallowed hard. "I just wanted the house listed. Just listed. Not sold yet. I thought once it was on the market, everything would fall into place. We needed money. We were drowning in debt." Her voice cracked, and Michael kept saying you were too independent to help, that you'd never give a loan. that you didn't trust me. My heart squeezed. This wasn't just greed. This was desperation, wrapped in manipulation. But desperation never justifies destruction. I asked softly, "So instead of asking me for help, you tried to take everything I owned?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. I panicked. I made stupid choices, and when the realtor questioned the signature, I doubled down. And when your son hesitated, I pushed harder. Her confession spilled out like a broken dam. I told him you wouldn't notice. I told him you were too old to manage the house. I told him we were doing the right thing. My throat tightened. You convinced him to betray his own mother. She shook her head violently. No, I didn't convince him. He was already angry. He felt like you favored his brother. He felt like you cared more about your garden than his struggles. He felt forgotten. The words hit me like cold water. Forgotten? I blinked, stunned. All the family dinners, all the late-night talks, all the financial help I had given, all the unconditional love. Forgotten? No, I whispered. He wasn't forgotten. He just didn't tell me the truth about his life. Her sobs deepened. I know, and I'm so sorry. But the judge, the evaluation, the legal consequences, I didn't know it would get this big. I stared at her. Her breakdown was real. Her fear was real. But her regret was too late. You didn't think it would get big? I repeated softly. You forged a legal document, Emily. You impersonated me. You tried to declare me incompetent. You sold my home. What did you think would happen? She covered her mouth with shaking hands. I wasn't thinking at all. Her voice collapsed. I've destroyed everything. Michael hates me. Your family hates me. The court is going to destroy me. I sighed, not out of pity, but out of exhaustion. Emily, I said gently, the court isn't destroying you. You destroyed yourself. Her sobs quieted into small, broken hiccups. Then she whispered something that chilled me. Should I turn myself in? Would that make anything better? I froze. I had never wished harm on her. I didn't want her punished. Not like that. Not prison. But consequences were coming. Whether she walked toward them voluntarily or was dragged, I spoke softly but clearly. What you do next is between you and the law. She lifted her swollen eyes. And what about you? Will you forgive me? The question hung between us. Forgiveness. Could I forgive the woman who tried to erase my entire life? Forgiveness wasn't impossible, but it wasn't owed. Not today. I don't know, I whispered. One day, maybe, but not today. She nodded slowly, understanding the finality. Emily stood, wiping her face. Thank you for letting me speak, she said in a trembling voice. I don't deserve your kindness. She walked to the door, paused, turned back, and whispered, I hope someday your son becomes the man you raised. Then she left. When the door closed behind her, I felt a strange emptiness. Not relief, not closure. An emptiness that comes before a storm. And that storm arrived 2 days later, when the court summoned all three of us for the final hearing that would decide our family's future. The courtroom was colder than usual that morning. Not physically, emotionally. Every seat was filled. Neighbors, extended relatives, people who once smiled at me in grocery aisles, but now watched like spectators at a public execution. My son sat at the left table. Emily sat behind him, her head down, hands clasped tightly in her lap, and I sat alone. Not because I lacked support, but because I needed the world to see that I stood on my own. When the judge finally called for my testimony, I rose slowly, letting the silence carry the weight of every betrayal, every lie, every wound. I walked to the stand. Harold gave me a reassuring nod. The judge folded her hands. "Mrs. Parker," she said calmly, "you may proceed with your final statement." The entire room fell still. I took a breath, then another, and finally spoke. "Your Honor, I never imagined I'd spend the last years of my life defending myself from my own child." A soft murmur rippled through the gallery. I continued. "I spent decades trying to give my son a better life than I ever had. I worked extra shifts. I went without meals so he could eat. I slept in hallways of hospitals when he was sick. I sat through every teacher conference, every heartbreak, every scraped knee. That house he tried to sell. I paid for it with my back, my hands, and my hope." My voice didn't tremble, it strengthened. "But this case is not about a house. It is about who gets to decide my life. And I need this court to hear me clearly. I am not incompetent. I am not confused. I am not disposable." The judge watched me with steady eyes. My son lowered his head. "I know my son is not an evil man," I said softly. "He is a weak man. A man who let fear, stress, and the wrong influence lead him into darkness." Emily swallowed hard. "But weakness is not an excuse. Forged signatures are not accidents. Declaring your mother unfit is not a misunderstanding. Selling her home behind her back is not something you fix later." Several people in the courtroom exhaled sharply. I paused, letting my words settle. "Your Honor, I do not want revenge." The room shifted. "I do not want him punished beyond repair. I do not want him destroyed. I only want one thing: to keep the rights every adult is entitled to, the right to my home, the right to my future, and the right to decide my life until the very last breath I take." My son wiped his eyes. "Your Honor, I forgive my son for being weak, but I cannot let weakness take my life from me. I cannot hand him power he has already abused, and I cannot pretend this didn't happen. I ask this court to protect my autonomy so that one mistake does not become my entire fate." My voice softened. "And as for Emily, I believe she acted under fear, under pressure, under desperation, but desperation does not erase consequences. She must face hers." Emily lowered her face, tears dripping onto her hands. Then I looked at my son, really looked at him. He was trembling. His mouth quivered like a child caught in the middle of a nightmare. I whispered, "I still love you, but love is not blindness." A gasp rolled through the room. The judge nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Parker." I stepped down. But before I reached my seat, I paused, turned back to the court, and said, "And for any mother sitting here today, or watching this later, please remember, your worth does not expire, your voice does not fade, and your life is still yours even when someone you love tries to take it away." The gallery fell into absolute silence, a silence so deep you could feel hearts cracking and healing at the same time. And that was my final statement. The judge leaned forward. "Thank you, Mrs. Parker. We will now move on to the final ruling." My heart thudded. Everything, my home, my rights, my dignity, hung in the balance. The judge spoke slowly, deliberately, like each word needed to be carved into stone. After reviewing all evidence, testimony, and the psychological evaluation, this court finds the following. I clutched the sides of my chair. Harold placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. 1. Mrs. Parker is fully competent. A wave of relief washed over me. My son shut his eyes. Emily let out a small sob of shame, not victory. 2. The forged signature constitutes fraud. Emily's shoulders collapsed. The courtroom buzzed. 3. Any attempt to sell the Parker home is hereby voided in full. My chest loosened for the first time in months. My home, my memories, my life were safe. 4. The power of attorney is invalid and revoked permanently. My son swallowed hard. He knew exactly what that meant. The judge continued, "Given the evidence, there remains the question of whether criminal charges will be recommended." My heart stopped. She paused, looked directly at me. "Mrs. Parker, the court acknowledges your wishes. You expressed no desire for punitive action. Therefore, this court will defer criminal charges unless new evidence arises." Emily exhaled like her soul had been returned to her body. My son looked at me with gratitude he didn't deserve, not yet. Finally, the judge delivered the conclusion that reshaped our family forever. The court hereby returns full authority, decision-making power, and property rights to Mrs. Parker permanently. The gavel struck. The sound echoed like thunder. My hands shook. I wasn't crying, I was breathing for the first time. Harold smiled. "You did it, Linda." No. I realized something deeper. I had saved myself. What happened after the ruling? Emily left the courtroom quietly. She didn't look back, and I didn't call after her. Some endings shouldn't be reopened. My son approached slowly, shoulders curved inward. "Mom," he whispered, "I'm so sorry." I let him speak. He cried. He apologized. He asked if I could ever trust him again. I placed a hand on his cheek. "I can love you," I said gently, "but trust must be earned." He nodded, tears soaking into my sleeve. "I'll earn it," he whispered. I hoped he would, but this time, I wasn't depending on hope alone. I had paperwork, legal protections, boundaries, strength. Strength I didn't know I had until someone tried to take everything from me. The final piece. Weeks later, I sat in my garden again, the same place where my life had been broken open and pieced back together. Birds chirped. Sunlight filtered gently through trees. The house behind me, my house, stood solid and safe. I realized something beautiful. I hadn't just protected my home. I had reclaimed my voice, my worth, my autonomy, and maybe one day I might even reclaim my son, but only if he chose the same thing I had chosen, to stand on the side of truth, no matter how painful. If you're watching this, and you're a mother, or someone aging alone, please hear me. Protect what's yours. Put everything in writing. Talk to an attorney before anyone asks you to sign a single page. And most of all, remember that your life still belongs to you. If you want more stories like this, real stories about strength, justice, and the courage to stand up when life tries to break you, please subscribe. You deserve to never face these battles alone.